Welcome to tonight's event at the NYU Abu Dhabi Institute. I'm really excited to be able to moderate this discussion. I've been looking forward to it for months, and my email inbox has about 500 emails from the last 3 days to prove it. So I'm going to be enjoying the after party, and I hope that you will stay around and enjoy it with us as well. My name is Bryan Waterman. I'm a faculty member in the Arts and Humanities division here at NYUAD, and I've been working for the last couple years with the US Embassy in Abu Dhabi on an intersections grant, which we've designed as an opportunity for cultural exchange between the US and the UAE. And we've been able to conduct a few programs in Abu Dhabi and other parts of the country as well. And I need to just mention at the beginning of our night tonight that this event is partially sponsored by that grant. And so we give our thanks to the embassy and especially to Jeremy Jewett in the cultural department for that help. It's particularly appropriate because the topic of tonight's discussion, as you know, is arts as cultural diplomacy. I'm going to introduce our two panelists and let them talk for a moment, and then have a conversation with each of them and let you hear a little bit about the work that they've been doing. We have tonight someone who is from the UAE, who's been working in the United States as a cultural diplomat, and someone who's from the United States who's here today and has been performing already today in the UAE as a cultural envoy as well. So the latter is Mary McBride, who's a singer based in New York, but who has been working since 2011 as a cultural envoy for the US State Department. Mary has 4 albums and a 5th that's on its way. She's received significant acclaim for her appearance and performance in the film Brokeback Mountain on an award-winning soundtrack. She's a prolific performer. I've seen her perform at Joe's Pub in New York, and her performance highlights also include performing with Elton John at the 35th anniversary of the Goodbye Yellow Brick Road. She's performed at the New Orleans Jazz Heritage Festival, the 2004 and 2008 US Democratic Conventions, and a number of other venues. And as a cultural envoy for the State Department, she's performed with her band in more than 20 countries, including Saudi Arabia, Pakistan, Vietnam, Indonesia, Afghanistan, and Russia. And now she's adding to that list the UAE, and she's going to be leaving for Oman on Monday, and then they're going to Pakistan after that. And I think you're going to Pakistan 2 or 3 times this spring,
yeah.
Right? So the list goes on. Mary is the founder of what is called the Home Tour, which you can find out, you'll hear more about it tonight, and you can find out more information about it at thehometour.org. The Home Tour uses live music to enrich lives, inspire and connect people, and engage communities around the world. It assembles local and nationally recognized musicians to perform for and with residents of communities that don't normally have access to live music. For instance, this afternoon she performed at the Ability Center here in Abu Dhabi, a center for children and young adults with various levels of handicap and abilities, and it was an interesting experience that I saw some film clips of, and I think you'll hear a little bit about it tonight too. The venues that the Home Tour visits include long-term healthcare centers, homeless shelters, orphanages, prisons, supported housing communities, homes for people living with HIV/AIDS, homes for veterans, and homes for people living with mental and physical disabilities. Since its inception in 2010, the Home Tour has partnered with more than 100 social service organizations worldwide and played for tens of thousands of residents. It's hosted on stage hundreds of residents from the communities where they've played, and you'll be hearing more about that again tonight. I'm also really excited to meet someone I've been a fan of for a long time, but I haven't had the chance to meet in person until today, and that's our other panelist, Noor Al Suwaidi. Noor is a graduate in 2004 with a bachelor's degree in studio arts from the American University in Washington, D.C. She's from Abu Dhabi, I should have said. In 2009, she obtained a master's degree in curating and contemporary design from Kingston University, London. She's a painter. Her artwork has been exhibited in gallery shows in London, Kuwait, Berlin, Washington, D.C., Dubai, Sharjah, Al Ain, and here in Abu Dhabi. She's currently represented in Dubai by the Quadro Gallery, and she's also a curator who's whose shows that she's put together have been in, she's put together shows for the UAE Embassy in Washington, D.C., and also for various galleries here in the UAE. She's worked for Sotheby's in London, for ING in Amsterdam. She's worked on art and cultural projects both for Dubai Arts and Cultural Authority and TDIC's Cultural Department. And she's currently also a part-time faculty member in the College of Art and Creative Enterprises at Zayed University here in Abu Dhabi. So please join me in welcoming these two terrific panelists tonight.
Thank you. Thank you.
I think what I'd like to do to start is just ask you each to spend a couple minutes telling us a little bit about the recent work that you're doing, the diplomacy work, but perhaps you can set the stage a little by talking about how you came to a point in your career as an artist where you realized that your career was going to take this kind of a turn, a diplomatic turn. Maybe,
Sure. Okay.
Why don't we have you start?
Yeah.
I think we have some slides queued for you ready.
Yeah, should I get into that?
It's up to you.
Yeah, we can put that up there. It's a nice quote. So basically, to get to your question about how I ended up here, I decided in 2009 to do my master's in curating. And when I made this decision, it was based on the fact that when I graduated from studio art and returned to the Emirates, there was few organizations or platforms for me as an emerging artist or someone starting out to be accepted and to kind of grow. And so when I did my master's, that was my aim, was to be able to facilitate that for other artists. And I'm really happy to say that I have tried to accomplish that through my work with nonprofit platforms such as Mariah Art Center in Sharjah and gallery spaces in the industrial area in Dubai. So with that said, when I started applying for jobs after I did my master's, and I was saying this to you earlier, it really does say something about law of attraction when I wrote down in the, when you send out a cover letter with your CV, and I said, I really want to be a part of promoting Emirati art inside the country and abroad. And in 2010, through my work with the Cultural Department of TCA, I curated a show for 10 artists to represent Emirati art as part of the celebration of the National Day at the Kennedy Center in Washington, D.C. And so that was the beginning. This is why I'm here. The Embassy of the United Arab Emirates in Washington, D.C. Partnered with Meridian International and approached me to co-curate an exhibition of 25 Emirati artists representing majority contemporary artwork. There are a couple of modern pieces there. It's also supported, I have to give a shout out here, by Ittihad, TCA, and the Sheikh Salama Foundation. If you don't mind, if we have some time, I'm just going to run through the names of the artists just to give them some credit. Without the artists and the collectors who gave us these pieces on loan, this exhibition wouldn't have happened. So we have Ibtisam Abdelaziz, Sham Al-Amri, Ammar Al-Attar, Khalid Al-Banna, Zainab Al-Hashmi, Sheikh Al-Mazrou', Mith Al-Mihirbi, Farah Al-Qasmi, Mohammed Al-Qassab, Abdul Qadir Reyes, Ali Al-Shamsi, Hamdan Buti Al-Shamsi, Matar bin Lahaj, Method Maythan, Ala Idris, Lamia Gargash, Mohammed Saeed Harab, Ali Luta, Latifa Maktoum, Khalid Mizena, Salma Nasib, Khalid Sha'far, and Ubaid Surur. So those are the 25 artists. The vision of this exhibition was only possible by His Excellency Ambassador Yusuf Al-Ateba. It was his baby, his project that he really wanted to make happen post-2010. And I'll never forget what he said in that occasion. When he gave the speech, he said, tonight, I'm not the ambassador. The artists in the room, they're our ambassadors. And for every city that we visit, just so to give a background. So this exhibition is the first of its kind. It's touring the United States. We opened in Washington, D.C. in May. We were in Texas last November. I just recently came back from California.
I should have said we have to thank you for flying from LA to be with us.
Thank you. So this is an example of when what I want to show you is not the exhibition and the artwork and what they look like in the space. What I want to show you is the program that we have been working on in every city. And so for every city that we visit, a couple of the artists fly out and they're part of the public program. And we do everything from a panel to presentations about their process, to critiques in students' classrooms. We work with low-income schools, after-school programs, and as much as possible engage with middle and elementary schools. Besides the actual interaction at the openings, events with many visitors that live in those states and cities.
How many of the artists have been able to travel with you?
So far, we've had 6 artists have come so far. Not all at once, but in different venues. So in Washington, we had 3 of the artists. I would consider myself an artist too, so that would be 4. But 3 artists came out in Washington, and we had Sham Al-Amri came out in Texas, and then recently Khalid Jafar and Sheikh Al-Mazrour in Los Angeles. And so this is just an idea of where we are, where we've been, where we're going. So next stop, there's no little red dot up there, so I think it's up here. Yeah, Spokane, Washington. It's going to be happening this May, and the plan goes into 2016. So
you go to Detroit after that?
Michigan, but not Detroit.
Okay.
So just some images of examples. We have what's really great on the website is that we have these educational packs for teachers. So let's say I wasn't there, the artist weren't there, or someone wasn't present. That teachers, before the students get to go to the exhibition, there's these exercises that they can do with the students in the classroom, and they can download them straight from the website. And what they're asked to do in these spaces is really interesting. They're asked to look at the artwork in the room and say which one took the most time, which one is their favorite, give a title to one of the artworks. So a different title than the original title. And the kids get really engaged, and it's amazing. And one of the things that we ended up doing in Washington is that we went to Children's National. And for me as an Emirati, on the receiving end, I was so impressed with all the investment of the UAE in that hospital. They had 3D printers, sorry to go off track, but 3D printers to make babies' hearts, so that surgeons could practice surgery on babies' hearts. And these machines and this technology is funded by Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed and the government of Abu Dhabi. And even for the artists to learn about those things. And then we did a workshop for all the children in the hospital. And that was a great opportunity. It was really rewarding. You can see some examples here. And then I'm moving on into Texas. So Shemma, when we were in Texas, she gave a workshop. She did a lot of lectures with students about her work, but she also got to visit a local artist who's a printmaker, and she actually made some prints with her. So the artists, when they're going out there, they're not just giving to the American visitors and students and schools. We're also looking for the artists to get an experience out of it. So we visit a lot of the museums, and they meet with local artists, and they engage with them. So, and at the end of every visit, all these artists that are being invited, they reflect in a blog entry with images and reactions to their experience and what they saw. And I mean, with Shema, she was so impressed with the Kimball Museum in Fort Worth, and we were blown away by the Dallas Museum of Art in Dallas. So
I'll ask you a little bit about this later, but I'm curious to know how much the other artists, or even the kids in the hospitals or something, or the kids who come in museum trips, how much do they know about the Emirates before they meet you? And then was there kind of an awakening moment for them?
This is funny. They know Mission Impossible, the movie,
Okay.
so Burj Khalifa.
Yeah.
So whenever we tell them, okay, who knows the UAE? And we put the pictures up of Abu Dhabi and Dubai and things, and they'd be like, I know, it's like Mission Impossible. And so there's funny stories that happen, and they ask very interesting questions about, like, they just want to know, what does your currency look like? Like, what does your money look like? And, you know, Zainab al-Hashimi's artwork is collage pieces from patterns from the currency. And when we talk about her work, we show them, and they find that so interesting. So there's little things like that I didn't expect. And they want to know how many people live there. And sometimes it's so simple, like at the end of any workshop, we'll say, do you have any questions? And, you know, one of the students, she was like, how is it to live there? Do you like, what's the weather like? You know, this is the kind of questions that they ask. And this is an example of an after-school program, the Hope Farm, which is a lot of single mothers. They're working late, so these two ex-police officers actually run this place. And there's a funny story about this as well, because Shema walks in with the veil on her scarf, and they're very religious. They're very religious, and he said, "I thought I saw Mary walk in." And Shema was like, "Did you hear what he said?" I was like, "It's okay." So so this was really amazing.
I thought your name was Miriam.
No, not me, but Shema. Well, this shows you how excited they all get. And, in the beginning, we show them the map, we tell them where we're from. But with children at this age, their attention span is not very long. So we don't bombard them with a lot of information. We just kind of let them know where we're from. And then what I like doing with the kids or children at the end is I tell them that now it's your chance to sign your artwork. So I would show them how to write their name in Arabic, and then they would sign their work in Arabic. They'd write their names, and they'd write them in English. So it was nice. So this is just a side view of the exhibition as it's installed in the Fowler Museum at UCLA.
It's currently installed there now.
It's it's there until the 8th of March. If you know anyone out there, let them go over and check it out. We did a great program with the Fowler. They were really amazing to work with. We did a beautiful panel along with my co-curator, Dr. Curtis Sandberg, with the artist, and Stephanie Sykes, who used to work for Art Dubai and now works for LACMA, was moderating it. And it was so nice to have that local LA element that also she was very knowledgeable about the art scene here. And so we kind of we're giving an overview, not just about art, but also with Khalid Shafar. He's a designer, and he's the only design piece in the exhibition. And it was important, I felt, to have that moment as an introduction, because design, as I see it, is going to be developing even more. And of course, we've witnessed with Design District D3 in Dubai and things that are happening, and Expo 2020, obviously this is going to come full circle. And this is just an example of the kind of presentations that high school students are listening to. So, Khalid within his work talking about Emirati crafts and how he uses it in his process. And I think with a lot of students that are looking about art and design in their own practices, being excited or inspired about how he's influenced from his surrounding and how he brings it into his artwork. And obviously, I was just giving a tour of the exhibition. This is another role I play, is a lot of interaction with the visitors and explaining the work. And this sculpture, just in case you didn't know, just because it's actually made out of camel milk containers. And the artist Mohammed Khassab made it. And it's titled Aluminium Life. And he's looking at the importance of aluminium in the past. But not only that, there is a note to be said that the UAE now is the 5th biggest exporter of aluminium in the world. So, through the works, you learn about the culture and you learn about the people in an easy and sometimes fun way, especially with the video works that are in the show. And this is really the wrapping up towards the end. Is an after-school program as well, the Boys and Girls Club in East LA, which have an ongoing relationship with the UAE Embassy in Washington, D.C. Not me, but the embassy paid for them to have a soccer field, which is really great. So the kids there get to play soccer in that field. And as part of the relationship, we also did a workshop. And what you see them creating is Sheikh Al-Mazrou's artwork. Not her current, but her past work was always based on pixels. So we were creating an image with colored paper, like on a huge wall, with the paper being the pixels. So everyone had to work together. And then also weaving using colored paper. You can see they all weave their little mats. So yeah, I'll just...
Nice. Yeah, we'll leave that slide there for a second, and then you're supposed to turn off your phone for these things, but if you need to follow somebody on Instagram really fast, I'll let you turn it back on for like 3 minutes.
As the show continues, I urge you to follow the embassy and the consulate in LA, and you can even follow me if you want. And basically, you'll see the show as it keeps going, and they're always tweeting about everything that's happening from the program and the art. And In Los Angeles specifically, we had two moments because we did highlights of the exhibition during LA Art Show, because this year the UAE was the featured guest country. So we were able to attract a lot of visitors through that platform to then come to see the whole show at the Fowler. And the blogs, definitely check them out, because as the days go by, there's new entries by the artists, and it really gives you an insight from their perspective, how they felt being there. And I mean, it's some nice stories about what they thought.
The people they encounter. Yeah, terrific.
Thank you.
I have a lot of questions for you, but I'm going to let Mary give her overview first, and then I'm going to hit you both with a few questions at the same time.
Just keep this.
Well, I just want to say how happy I am to be here. We've been routed through Abu Dhabi a couple of times, and finally we got to stop for more than a half a day. So it's awfully nice to be here at NYU. I'm an NYU grad, and I said it all comes full circle because one of my very first shows that wasn't in a bar that was booked in New York was booked by Bill Bragan. So
the director of our art center.
Who's the director of the art center. I'll tell you a little bit that's not in my bio, and it's mostly my musical background. My family is originally from Louisiana. My mother grew up in Cajun country, and my dad grew up in a tiny little town in northern Louisiana where he listened to a lot of country music. And so my parents, when they were growing up, went to LSU, and they used to go every Thursday night to a club called the Yellow Slipper. And they used to listen to Elvis and Big Mama Thornton and all of these amazing acts. And so I grew up very fortunate in that my parents had great musical taste. So I started singing when I was little. I have 14 first cousins, all of whom play music, all of whom sing, mostly on key. And when I was little, my parents thought I would have some voice lessons. And so they had me study with a woman named Dorothy Remington, who at the time was a professor in Washington and also taught for the Washington Opera. So I had opera training for several years, and then I kind of got the rock and roll bug pretty quickly. And then when I went to NYU, I started a band, and I really started a band for fun. I just thought, oh, we'll play at this little bar on 11th Street, and people said to me, you know, have you ever thought about making a record? And at the time I was acting, I was writing, I was doing lots of different things, and then I went to South by Southwest in Austin one year, and a guy said to me, you should meet this producer named Lou Whitney. He would be great to produce your record that you haven't even thought about making yet. And so I met this guy, Lou Whitney, and I liked him, and I liked his spirit. And he said, what kind of record do you want to make? And I said, I think I just want to make a fun record. And so that was my kind of impulse and interest in recording. And we went into the studio, and I made my first record. And we then went on to make more. And we went on the road, and we were on the road in the United States for over 10 years, just going back and forth and back and forth. And when I made my last album, which is called The Way Home, I was sort of trying to figure out what my plan was. It's like music was suddenly all on the internet. I didn't know if touring in the US made sense. And so I was home with my family, and they decided that we should go volunteer. It was a volunteer day. And so we organized a trip to visit this wonderful group called We Are Family, which visits with elderly people all throughout Washington. And so I was visiting with these two older women, and they asked me what I did, and I said, I'm a singer-songwriter, and they said, oh, we wish you'd come sing for us in our living room. And I did have one of those light bulb moments where I thought, what am I doing going and playing in that empty club in Cleveland for the 5th time, when there are people all over the world who would love to hear live music and don't have the opportunity because of disability, because of age, because they don't have the money in some cases. And so I started to kind of mull over this idea of touring in a different way and finding audiences rather than putting the burden on audiences to come and find me. So in 2010, I started what's now called the Home Tour. And the idea was to do just that, to play all different places where people live in America. And we started off our tour at Angola Prison in Louisiana. I had a sponsor before I added that show. And then it was an amazing show because one of the things that we deal with playing for a lot of people, whether it's in prisons, whether it's shelters, people who at a certain point in their life have made specific decisions that have, and made them end up where they are. And so I realized that these people love live music. And so we played at Angola. It was a very surreal experience. For those of you who aren't familiar with this prison, it was featured in a great documentary called The Farm. And they have their own radio show, their own TV station. And so I'm getting ready to play essentially for 400 people who are in prison for life. And a guy comes up to me and he's like, I have great news. And I said, what? He said, it's going to be a live feed all over the prison. And so I was like, I don't know what to do with that information, but that's great. And so that was the beginning of our tour, and we toured in 20 different cities. And it really was a pilot tour in the true sense of the word, because I didn't know if it would work. I didn't know if there was a need for it. I didn't know if there were other nonprofits already doing it. But what we found in every city again and again and again is that there were places, especially supportive housing communities in downtown communities, that had interest, and a lot of people weren't going to play for them. One of my favorite shows on that pilot tour was in LA. We partnered with Skid Row Housing Trust, which has 16 supportive housing buildings in downtown LA. And we played at this one building, and I came up with the idea to invite residents to come and play with us. And so I thought, we'll see who wants to come. It'll be a couple people. And so our first act to sit in on the home tour was this soul act from LA. And they got up as our opening act, and they were so unbelievable. And they were so good that I turned to my band and I was like, we have to step up our game. So that was amazing. And that has since become one of the central points of the home tour, which is that we always have residents perform with us. On that pilot tour, we were fortunate, very fortunate, in that the Washington Post sent a reporter out with us. And it was interesting because the editor told me that they were trying to figure out whether it was kind of a PR thing, whether we were really interested in doing this on an ongoing basis. And they sent a reporter out with us for 2 weeks, which for those of you who deal with press, that's a really long time. But he fortunately got the idea, believed that we wanted to do this on an ongoing basis, and wrote a cover story for the Washington Post magazine, which was a real shift for us in terms of the attention and interest that we got. The biggest shift for me is that I got a call from the US Department of State, and they asked me if I would be interested in being a cultural envoy and if I would be interested in touring in Russia. That was in June of 2011, and since then we've performed in 23 countries. And I always say that the State Department's the best booking agent in the music business. I don't know anyone else who could do this. But Russia was our first tour, Pakistan was our second. And I brought a few slides to show you from some of these tours. I think that the greatest thing about working with the State Department and also representing American artists in the best way that we can is that I am able to kind of take what our idea for the home tour was and partner with embassies and try and bring that idea and to play for the same types of audiences. This was our first tour. It was our last tour in Russia. We've been to Russia since 3 times. We've been across Siberia and back. But we always go back to this place, which is the only rehabilitation center, a comprehensive center for people with physical disabilities. And we set up on a very hot day in Moscow and played for this crowd. And a lot of them have rotated out, but a lot of them are still there, and we saw them again this year. This was on our first tour in Pakistan. The State Department has a wonderful program called the Access Language School, where students learn English. And when I first went, they said, send us some of your songs so that they can learn them. And so I sent them the song that I sang in Brokeback Mountain. I sent them some songs from my records. And these little girls in the front chose to learn the song from Brokeback Mountain. And so it was pretty profound for me sitting there and having a sing-along from that movie in this country. This is a school, a group of schools called the Community Schools in Karachi. And one of my favorite things about doing tours in places where they don't ordinarily have live concerts is these kids just sort of storm the stage. And there's something sort of fabulous and punk rock about it. No one tells them not to. They just show up, they come up, they're taking selfies with me. And I learned early on that, we are on their clock and we are there to play by their rules. And so our sort of notion of, we get up and we play in a proscenium environment and you all stay there is just all bets are off. And they have been off for 3 years. This is a wonderful place called Dar al Sukun in Karachi. The disability community doesn't really exist in Pakistan. There are some wonderful people, a lot of people involved with the Catholic Church, a lot of different NGOs who are trying to do work. But for the most part, people with disabilities there are abandoned. And this place we played, a lot of people have lived there since they were under 6 months old. And this woman in front with the glasses was so wonderful. She greeted us, and she has lived there for 30 years. And she said, "My name is Cookie, and I'm going to introduce you. I love public speaking." And that's what's so wonderful about this place, is they're sort of in a very welcome bubble. But one thing we always try and do is just get people up on their feet, especially seniors, especially people with disabilities, in whatever way they can. And this morning we had such a fantastic time. We played at the Ability Center, which with a lot of kids with disabilities, and it's just a great feeling looking out and seeing kids who are oftentimes very sedentary getting up and moving, and even kids in the wheelchairs were moving, and we got them singing along, and it's always a good feeling. This is in Sadr City. We went to Iraq that same year. And this is a place called Iraqi Safe Home for Children. It was actually featured in a documentary, and I think about these kids all the time and wonder where they are. But I often say that my greatest export is the hokey pokey, and this is us getting our hokey pokey on. I think we've done it in all 23 countries. This is a senior center in Baghdad. This was one of my very favorite moments, because we played for these women, and we walked into a room and it was filled with women, and there was one woman who was very just like overly sunburned. And most of these women were not from Baghdad. They were brought from different parts of the country because it was one of the places that would take care of them. And so I asked I asked our translator where this woman was from, and he asked her, and she said, I'm from the garbage, thinking I asked where she came from. And this group, the senior center, had found her. She had some mental disability wandering around in the garbage, and they brought her to this place, and it was her second week. And the most incredible part, I'll never forget this, we were singing an old Willie Dixon soul song, and she got up, the woman who had been told us she was from the garbage, and she was helping all of the other women get up and dance. And I got them to do this background song, and she was leading them in this song. And it was such a wonderful feeling, because when we left the senior center, we kept hearing them sing this backup part that was all of 3 notes, like, oh yeah. And they were singing it over and over again after we had left. And but we all think about them too now. This is an orphanage in Lahore, which is and I'm showing several from Pakistan because we do such a range of shows there. And this is one of the places that was just so joyful, and we had all these kids get up and sing with us, and they knew a lot of American music. And so just a wonderful photo. We also played a lot in Vietnam. We did a tour of Vietnam, Laos, and Taiwan. And we did a whole day in Quang Tri, and a lot of people who had been affected by Agent Orange, and a lot of people who were disabled. And again, we sort of had this wonderful, wonderful day with them. This was a music school actually for girls, all girls in Vietnam. And these girls were so wonderful, and they did a whole presentation on these traditional instruments for us when we came. It's funny, when we go to places, they say, would you be okay if we performed for you? And we're so happy. I would do the whole tour just sitting there and having people play for us. So that's one of the best parts too. This, back to my favorite sort of backup singers and opening acts. This is a senior center in Taiwan, and they have this drumming group on these buckets, and they started off our show singing "We Will Rock You" on these buckets, and they had these balloons, and it was such a production. I think we were supposed to be there for 2 or 3 hours, and we were there the whole day. This is another disability organization in Laos with kids. This is back in Kurdistan. And this was a community of internally displaced persons. This was one of the first, and they had all just started coming in from Syria. And when we got to this location, it was just an empty box. It was I think it was a USAID project, and they were just starting to build these buildings. And we didn't see anyone on the street, and we said, who in the world is who's gonna come? And so we somehow figured out power and started to play. And slowly but surely, the audience came, and the kids always come first, and then their parents, usually their fathers follow, and then the mothers came, and we had an amazing day, and we actually may be going back to play in Erbil in the next month or so. This is in Argentina. We did, I think 2 or 3 weeks in Argentina, and this is a place called Tigre, and we had to take a boat to get there, and it's this very isolated school, and these kids were fantastic. And one of the other things we did in Argentina is played with these orchestras. There's a Fulbright scholar who has created this incredible orchestra network in all of the barrios throughout Argentina, and there's one infamous barrio called 31 that is right behind the train station in Buenos Aires. And we got there, and they had learned, I think, 10 of our songs with a full orchestra. And it was an absolute train wreck, but it was so much fun. This is in Albania. We spent our 2 big shows in Albania, in Tirana, were at prisons. And this was one of the days that I was very sort of thankful to be able to do what we do. We got there, and there's probably about 40 women who are at this prison. Mostly they have been victims of domestic abuse and have shot their spouses, but most of them are spending their lives in this prison, which is thankfully run by lovely people. But one woman got up after we sang, and she said, "I want to thank you so much for playing, because I've missed all of the events that are important to me in my life. I've missed both of my daughter's weddings. I've missed, my brother's funeral." And she went on, and I realized that all of the major events that she listed were events that would have included music. And so we were happy to be able to bring that to her. This was a different story. This was the men's prison. And it was so hot that day. That's what I remember when I look at that picture. But we set up, and they had a rule there. They had guards in between. I think there were two prisoners to each guard, and they were only allowed to dance one person at a time. And so this guy was great. He had this kind of London T-shirt on, and I'm dancing with him, and we really did have this sort of fabulous day. They have this garden, which they showed us. It was a little bit sad, but we were like, oh, they were having a garden. But this guy was so charismatic and so funny, and I was so happy that we only heard in the van leaving that he had killed 4 people. And I'm flirting with him. We're having a great time.
You're hoping that he just stole something.
Yeah, exactly. Woo, it's rough. But you know what? We laugh about that day, but the truth is, I do believe in the work that we do in the States and the work that we do in prisons in the States and all over the world, that people have made wrong choices at a certain time. Sometimes they've made 4 wrong choices. But that they still deserve to hear live music, and that wherever they are, healing that can happen from playing music. And the home tour was inspired in part by this wonderful quote by Maya Angelou, where she says, "I long to feel at home wherever I find myself." And that's something that we always sort of think about and meditate on, because we're with people who are going to be somewhere they don't want to be for a long time, whether by choice or not. This is in Afghanistan. The last time I was in Abu Dhabi, I was at the airport on my way to Afghanistan. And Afghanistan was quite a ride. It was, the first day we got there, there was 12 people killed at the airport in the exact spot where we had been a few hours prior, and so we were a little on edge. But the great thing about the embassy programs, and I thought, oh, we're not going to go anywhere. I mean, there's been this massive, suicide bombing at the airport, and 12 contract workers have died, and were they going to send us out, like outside the green zone? And the answer was yes. And we played a full 10 days of shows. And Aga Khan Cultural Center, which I'm sure you all know well, has this incredible center there, and all of these wonderful music students. We also played at the French Cultural Center there, which is a great space. But the last night was probably the most poignant, because I had heard from a friend in New York that there is a rock club. I'm sure there's many, but I had heard about this one that was run by a Pakistani guy and his girlfriend from Boston, and it was this incredible space, and you had to find it, and so somehow we got clearance to go to this club at 10 o'clock at night on our last day. And so we get there, and it's just this, I always say it's like every New York club wants to be this cool. It really was this cool. It was just great lighting and great people and interesting conversation. And they asked us if we wanted to play, and we were slightly nervous. And there was a kind of a little box room we were in. And I said, well, yeah, we'll do a set. And they turned off all the lights, and they put up full soundproofing. I mean, this sort of crew of people with full soundproofing, soundproofed the entire room, and we did our final set. And it was an amazing experience, and we played for half an hour, then they took it off, and then we got back, and then we went back, and the next day we were in New York, and it was an incredible end to our tour. So those are just a few of the places we've been. I wanted to share with you.
Amazing.
So I'm curious about the experience that both of you must have had, where we tend to think of artists as being individuals and having their own individual visions and agendas, and yet you're both called on not just to be artists, but to be representatives of a country. And I'm sure that you both have encountered people who you're either the first Emirati that they've met or the first American that they've had this kind of an interaction with. And I wonder if you can tell us a little bit about that experience. And what does it mean to be the representative of a country? And what happens when you meet someone who's never met an American before or an Emirati before? How does that feel for you?
I mean, one of the things that's been nice about playing in places like Afghanistan and Pakistan is there certainly aren't a lot of American musicians that go. Yeah. But for me, the more poignant part is going and being one of the only women who leads a band. And so I do a lot of work with women and girls, and I think, the whole notion of cultural diplomacy and exchanging beliefs and ideas and traditions, for me, it always goes back to traditions. And so, if you're in Pakistan, it's not a tradition to be in a public space listening to music. It's not a tradition to have women leading a band. All of that is sort of breaking it down. And so I find with the little kids, it's most profound. And with the boys too, because they haven't kind of made that shift in understanding. And so we, before we identify ourselves as, American artists, usually in those situations we just play without an introduction, and we get them up and talking, and then we talk about American music. And the truth is, no matter where you are, people do know American music. And so whether or not and I certainly, am not representing American musicians. I think most great American music comes from the African American tradition. So I make a point of saying that and going through kind of what I think the great history of American music is. And you hope that it does just break down barriers, just simply singing, and actually the science of song, like what it does physically to people, relaxes them, it makes them open. And so I hope through that music, we're able to have a conversation about what it means to meet an American. So it's just a beginning.
Noor, how about you?
I think we have a lot in common. Like the fact that the first thing you said was that being a woman and being a woman leading a band. I think it was I got the same kind of feedback in the United States. I mean, coming from the Arab world, we're kind of, with the story we're telling through the artwork and informing people about the UAE through artworks, they kind of lump us with everybody else. So, the fact that I drive a car, they're surprised. The fact that I'm a woman and I'm there and I'm speaking, and like I was telling you earlier, the story in Texas where a gentleman right after my opening remarks came straight up to me to say, I just need to tell you that I'm so impressed, and you really keep going and keep doing this. Like, I was like, there are many other women like me where I come from. I'm not the only one, So I think, and then what you were saying about being an artist and then representing a nation. I mean, obviously I don't represent every Emirati, but I do I think as a curator, I act as a translator, and I'm basically just the voice to kind of interpret and explain the artwork of 25 artists and what they were feeling and what they were thinking. And with those discussions come, again, what you were saying is the traditions, and people want to tell their story. So half of it is speaking, but the other half of it is listening. And I'm sure with you, it's just as much as you want to go and play for them, they want to play for you. And the same thing with the artwork. Just as much as they want to hear and are curious, the first thing they want to do is tell you about their mom, their grandma, what they said, how they felt that there were things in common with the works that they saw. And the works that speak to them the most, whichever ones they are, they, if it happens to be like a collage piece that reminds them of an African-American artist, or if it's, the Ninja Turtle poster and Lamia Gargash's photograph that brings them back to their own memories, there's obviously these common human things we all share. And goes back to that quote that I put up there, and like music is about emotion, and artists are also explaining their feelings through their work. And if we're all honest, then there's definitely automatically a link between us all.
I have a question maybe that also links what both, if you think of each one of you as being a curator, because I think you're also curating a musical tradition, I mean, for your audience, right, and informing them about its history. When you're abroad, let's say, you're not performing at home, you're not curating at home, how does your work change depending on that location? I mean, so you're curating a show that's going to be traveling through the United States, you're traveling all over the world. How's it different being out rather than at Joe's Pub in New York? And how's it different to have a show at UCLA rather than in the space in Abu Dhabi?
I mean, for me, I have to say I'm very lucky that with Pass Forward, it was a collaboration between the curator from Meridian, Dr. Curtis Sandberg, and he had a deep understanding and historical knowledge of America, which no matter how long, maybe even you as Americans don't know as much as he does. He, can tell you about every history, about every state, and he finds the connections and the threads. And, I studied and lived in America. I could see some of those threads, but he had this in-depth understanding that really also with artwork that, for example, that I would be critical and thinking, oh, well, this should be in the show. And then seeing the Americans' reaction as an American curator towards the work, that was, he's got a point there that I didn't realize because I'm so immersed in it. So I think that the collaboration that happened on this project was really special. I think on a personal note, I really enjoyed every step of the way. I remember moments where it was deadlines, and with everything happening, I was still so happy to be working with the team. And there was, of course, calls every week at different times, and Friday's working day in America, it's not here, and then I'd be on the phone until 2, 3 a.m. in the morning because they're still working over there. So
I can so totally relate.
Yeah. So with your NYU meetings and things. So, but I think that it's whatever my experience was. Everyone who's from another country here, who's coming to Abu Dhabi to work in NYU or to be a student here, or they have the same. They come with the same kind of expectations. Maybe I'm not assuming that a lot of people that. Or visitors to my exhibition are assuming. So, assuming that oh, it's, is it a war zone? Is there like, are you living in a desert? Do you have a camel? Like, these stereotypes that they don't come from, like, it's not, I don't judge them for thinking that. It's the limited information that they're getting. And the same thing goes the other way around. When, my impressions of America, what they were before I went. I even remember in college when I did my first 101 English writing course. And I was supposed to write a paper. I wrote it. My title of my paper was, "What's Up, Habibi?" And I was just reacting to my impressions as someone who hasn't been to America. And I remember like so clearly that I wrote in that paper, not everyone here drinks out of big coffee mugs like they do on Friends, because this is like the pop culture that has been exported successfully around the world, does leave a lot to say to the reality of being in America. And the same goes the other way around. So.
Well, I would say, in terms of curating, for us, it's just figuring out what tunes we're going to play. And I've just long given up on a set list, much to the chagrin of my band. But you never know what's gonna work. Sometimes we've been doing this programming in Connecticut with young adults with mental disabilities. And the songs that resonate with them and that they respond to rhythmically, melodically, are oftentimes completely different than other crowds that we're with. So oftentimes we'll just start off with, a ballad, a rocker, mid-tempo in the first few songs and kind of feel out the crowd and then build it from there. But working on kind of diplomacy tours also gives us this great excuse to go back and listen to iconic American artists and cover a lot of older artists and also current artists, which we never would do in the States. So, we go wherever we play that's, always somebody wants to hear an Adele song. And I fortunately love Adele. We do Rolling Stones, Ray Charles, Beatles. I mean, even if some of the kids we're playing for don't know those songs, we play the songs that we, hope we can leave them with.
Can I have a
But where did
request?
you tell me they didn't know Katy Perry where?
No, it was really interesting. God, no, it was really
Was it Russia you were saying? I think.
Yeah, we were in Siberia. Our last tour, we went all the way across Siberia to Ulan-Ude, and we were playing in this beautiful spot, and there were all these kids, and I'm trying to be all current, right? You want to hear a Teenage Queen? You want to hear a Katy Perry song? No, it was just blank stares. I bring up Adele, they know who Adele is, and they knew big time who Rihanna was. Where's the rhyme or reason to that? So, and John Denver, huge in Russia. It's all about country roads. So we do this kind of upbeat versions of country roads, and he's big everywhere. So, you just never know. It's like it's like in the States. There's no rhyme or reason which bands hit, right? Now, especially with the internet, it's just crazy luck, some crazy viral video that goes out. It's just this wild happenstance. And so it's like that all over the world. So we try and figure out, we always learn songs, local songs. Vietnam was probably the hardest thing I've ever done, was to sing a song in Vietnamese. And we've learned some songs in Urdu, and we're trying, everywhere we go to do that. And then we try and get kids to teach us some of their songs. So it's a little bit of a mishmash, but it works.
Hi, thank you so much for this. It's truly inspiring, and I'm so happy to see that this is going on. My question to both of you is, before people actually meet you, before you go out to sing, before your art is ever seen, how do you get a hold of people? How do you mobilize people? How do you tell them about your mission, what you're all about? How do you excite them before you even see them to make that connection? Thanks.
Well, after marketing and doing everything for my band for 10 years, have been very fortunate to work with the embassies around the world, and they have incredible networks with venues, with nonprofits, with the people in the cities where they work. So we have been back to a few countries now enough times that we'll say, oh, we really would like to bring this particular group together. But on our first tours in different places, it's not unlike here. We're put in situations and very thankful to meet new people.
I think with us, there's a combination of, there's a few players. With art, you have the venue that we are committed to present the work in. So if it was like the Fowler at UCLA, or Art Space 111, or the Meridian Art Center in DC, they have their own network and their connections, but plus the UAE Embassy have their relationships in every city, and they have people that are on their committees and their councils, and we do a lot of outreach to schools. So I think that's our number one thing. I mean, in DC, we had 500 elementary and middle schools visit the exhibition. So that's a lot. So every city's different dynamics, different kind of politics with the governments, like the local schools compared to the private schools. And of course, even the timing of the exhibition. Does it fall within the timing of the school? Are they on break? With the Fowler, the students had just started coming back into the classrooms. I mean, that's for the higher level, the university, but with the schools that we dealt with, a majority of them were middle schools and high schools in California. So I think that it's a combination of everybody's efforts. And even with the artist visits, I mean, in some states, I knew some artists, so I organized our visits to their studios. And so everybody puts in their 2 cents, and it's a collaborative effort. And and all the artists and the collectors get a save the date, so they can also spread the word within. Everyone now with internet, social media, we're all connected. So, yeah.
Great.
Mary, I was just wondering, Coke Studio has a lot of wonderful locations that in countries where you visited. Do you ever get to interact with those musicians?
We do. We worked with them in Islamabad for the first time. And I'm actually going back. They're involved with this festival called Music Mela, which is happening north of Islamabad in April. And they have artists from all over coming in, and they're going to be doing live recordings, but they're doing great work.
My question's for both of you. I was wondering if you've ever faced any negative reaction where you've been and how you've dealt with that.
Well, I was telling folks earlier that we were in, and I keep coming back to Pakistan, but it was one of our first tours. We were there when Hillary Clinton was there in 2011 for kind of her big drones press conference. And she was late for her press conference, and they called us and they said, "Do you mind coming and singing for the press?" So of course I'm thinking of my Facebook post, "We're opening for Hillary Clinton," like even before I get in the room. And so I tell the band, I'm like, "Put on your suits, come downstairs." So we go to the lobby. It doesn't have a good ending in terms of us playing, but they shuffled us in to the room, and we're standing there with these. It was a pretty hostile crowd, and she definitely had to win them over. And we're standing there with our guitars, and like, what are we doing there? And then it was too late for us to get up on the stage and play, but they had to start, so they shuffled us down and they put us in the front row, and they weren't gonna have any Americans in this press conference, and there we are, my ragged rock and roll band, like in the front row with Hillary. But that was probably one of the times that was most hostile. But I have to finish that story because it was so funny. She was incredible in being briefed about everything, right? So she was briefed on our band before she came, and my drummer at the time had been on the road forever. He was 70 years old. And he was from the Ozarks. His name was Bobby Lloyd Hicks. And she had been told all about us. And so we go over to meet her and do a photo. And she looked at him and she said, "You are Bobby Lloyd Hicks from the Ozarks." And I just thought he was going to have a heart attack. And he retired after that. That was like, it couldn't get any better than that. But the only other place, we played the Lahore Press Club, which we are not allowed to go anymore, and won't be there on this next tour. And that was, the press situations are probably the most challenging because we're there with too much security, and it's awkward.
I don't have an exciting story. You win. I've just enjoyed learning so much about America. I mean, Texas was an amazing experience for me. It was very strange. Everybody wanted to take a picture of us in our national dress. They thought they loved it. And in LA Art, a lot of our student ambassadors came out to support us. We have 450 Emirati students in California. And they were wearing the same kind of national dress as in Maître de Maithan's artwork. So a lot of people kept stopping one of the students and saying, "Is that you? Is that you?" I was like, "No, we don't all look the same, but he's just dressed in the same clothes." And he was enjoying it. He was loving it. He was like, "Yeah, me, right there." So it was a funny story, but yeah, no danger.
Hi, I'm from the States, and I just wanted to ask both of you, and then Mary, a little bit about government and corporate sponsorship and how important that is to the arts and to you personally. And I guess, Mary, I didn't know that the State Department did this, because we always hear in the States about arts funding being cut. So if you could talk just a little bit about that.
I didn't know the extent of it when I started. There are a number of music programs. One's called American Music Abroad, where they send bands out to do a number of countries, and then each embassy has their own budget for certain programming. I've done more of it probably as an individual band than some, mostly because I'm insane and I'll go to a lot of these places. I've become like Mikey, you know, the kid Mikey with the cereal. They're like, ask Mary McBride, she'll go. You know?
She'll go anywhere.
But it's been an incredible, I mean, we've never been told, you know, not to sing a certain song. We've never had any restrictions on what we do. We have had corporate sponsors be a part of our program in Russia, definitely. And I work with corporate sponsors through the home tour. I mean, we work with the Gates Foundation is one of our key sponsors. We work with Vulcan Ventures, with JP Morgan. So in those scenarios, it's very important. I mean, in the States, I couldn't do what I do with the home tour without corporate and foundation support, because that's the only place it'll come from. I mean, there's some NEA support, but it's hard to get.
I mean, I think one of the things that's remarkable, and maybe was buried in what you said about the home tour, is that in these spaces, and maybe this is peculiar to the US spaces, but maybe it happens elsewhere, in these spaces there are often rooms built that can accommodate this kind of performance, but that they're not being used.
Right.
So you come in and use them, and then set up the means by which people will continue to come and use them after you're gone.
I mean, it's really a model. I mean, when we first started, I come from like a long line of non-profiteers, so I didn't want to go into these nonprofits and say, oh, we're going to come put on a show and create all this work for you. You know, I wanted it to be something that was valuable to them. And a guy, Mike Alvadrez in LA, who runs Skid Row, said to me, he said, you know what, all the developers who build these affordable housing buildings build to get a tax break. They have community rooms, they have some performance spaces, and they have these amazing kitchens, and they're very rarely used. And so that's what we're doing with the home tour now, is we're working to develop the home tour in Detroit and to create a network of supportive housing communities who already have the infrastructure but don't have the programming support. And also to make them aware of the programming that they're all doing, so that we can kind of create a touring network that will ultimately not be, you know, the Mary McBride Band. That can be a consortium of 30 bands in Detroit that have an ongoing relationship with all of these different nonprofits, so they can, you know, make it local. So that's what we're trying to do, and the sponsors have been just hugely helpful.
I just think it's very important for the sustainability of the programs that we're doing that corporate sponsorship exists. You know, with our exhibition, the touring and shipping, obviously, of the exhibition, it takes a lot of cost. So for me, I think the continuation of the program as a program beyond Pass Forward will probably depend a lot on finding alternative sponsorship beyond just the embassy and the government entities. It's important.
I'm just kind of hoping in the future, this is your homework assignment, maybe somewhere in Michigan you guys are going to have a crossover. Maybe the Mary McBride
Wouldn't that be great?
will play in the middle of the Pass
The art
Forward
prize.
gallery.
Do you know the art prize? That's big. great thing in Grand Rapids
Make
and
this
Detroit.
happen.
Yeah.
Please join me in thanking both of these guests
you.
tonight.
Thank you very much.